Welcome to the NZ Travel Show, an interactive show where you can ask your NZ travel questions to the experts behind nzpocketguide.com, New Zealand's largest travel guide. The NZ Travel Show will start in exactly 2 minutes. Just the time for you to hit the like button, ring the notification bell, and subscribe if you have not done so yet. nzpocketguide.com has over 3,000 articles covering all aspects of travelling in New Zealand, from a working holiday gap year to tips for a perfect family holiday. The site also features dozens of pre-made itineraries that you can use to plan your ideal trip in New Zealand. It's all available for free at nzpocketguide.com, so check it out. The NZ Travel Show is hosted by Robin, the Operations Manager of South Pacific Pocket Guide, the company behind nzpocketguide.com. The New Zealand Travel Show is also hosted by Laura, a journalist and editor-in-chief of South Pacific Pocket Guide and all its publications, including nzpocketguide.com. We're exactly 1 minute away from the NZ Travel Show. Get yourself comfortable and start asking your NZ travel questions in the chat. Robin and Laura will go over them when the show starts. In 30 seconds, our experts will be live from New Zealand to give you all the practical New Zealand travel tips you need, from the best transport options to the best accommodations and activities to choose for the perfect New Zealand holiday. Live from New Zealand, this is the NZ Travel Show with your travel experts, Robin and Laura.
Good morning, everybody. It is Sunday, the 21st of July. Time flies. And this is the NZ Travel Show. It's 8 a.m. right here in New Zealand. It's bright and early.
Not so bright, because it's the dead of winter and it's so dark.
It is quite dark and dreary today, I have to be honest. Yeah, I do agree with that. Okay, so this is the NZ Travel Show. This is your place to be able to interact with us and ask us all your questions about traveling in New Zealand and plan your perfect holiday to beautiful New Zealand with us. But why should people ask for our help to plan their trip to New Zealand?
Well, if you haven't heard already, nzpocketguide.com is New Zealand's largest travel guide, and it is run by us too. We have
I'm Robin.
lived, worked and travelled in New Zealand for over a decade now, so we kind of know a thing or two about New Zealand and experiencing it, making the most of it and all that good stuff. So yeah, that's why we're sort of the experts of travelling in New Zealand. So if you want to ask your questions about anything to do with New Zealand or travelling in New Zealand, then go ahead in the live chat. We are here for 1 whole hour at your service. But if you do miss the live show, then no worries. You can always put your questions in the comments section of any of our YouTube videos. And Robin's pretty good at replying to people.
Yeah, I do that. She doesn't. Stop saying, hey, Laura, I want to ask you a question. I am answering question, guys.
I'm giving you the credit, you know.
I know, but in the comments, quite often people ask you questions, and I'm like, well, I'm the one replying. I get no credit for this. Cool. So on top of answering your questions about traveling in New Zealand, what we do as well is we do have like a bit of a theme every week, all right? And so let's just dive right in.
Ooh.
All right. Yes, so today we're going to be talking about scuba diving in New Zealand and the best places to scuba dive in the country. So I don't know if you know that, but beautiful New Zealand is beautiful both above the water and also underwater, and we have scuba diving option on both islands, North Island and South Island, with some of the offshore islands of the North Island of New Zealand attracting some beautiful tropical fish, and there's a glacial waters of the South Island, yes, glacial, waters of the South Island, attracting some of the most amazing species such as great white shark and even whales. So yeah, plenty of things to do to see underwater in New Zealand. We even have black coral in Milford Sound, which is something that I've yet to have witnessed myself. I'm pretty upset about that. So yeah, plenty of awesome things coming right up with the best places to scuba dive in New Zealand. Let's just begin with the first comment today. What is Adil asking?
Let's say hi to Adil. So Adil says, Kia ora, Robin, Laura, and all the viewers. He has a question. Does New Zealand offer accessible scuba diving for people with disabilities? I would say with people with disabilities, because that covers such a broad term, it is really on a case-by-case basis. So you should really get in contact with dive shops, basically scuba diving operators, individually sort of state like, the disabilities that you have and just discuss with them whether they would be comfortable taking you scuba diving, because there's a lot of safety concerns when it comes to scuba diving, in terms of sort of
weight, carrying the equipment, even just on the boat, equipping it, so you'd have to either be able to carry the equipment on the boat or being able to put it in the water, which sometimes alleviate the weight. So I think there's a lot of things to take in consideration. So rather than us being able to give you a blanket, yes, plenty of options. It's easier for us to say, oh, I'm eating some seaweed in the meantime. Sorry about that, guys. So rather than us saying a blanket yes or no, I think it's better for you to contact the operators with which you would like to go scuba dive with, and just interact with them directly, explain what type of disability you are having, and and asking them what option they have for you. All right. So with that in mind, that's a really good topical question. I love it, Adil. With that in mind, let's get started with the best place to scuba dive with. Literally the place we are currently scuba diving eating seaweed at right now. So Laura, get us started with Paul Knight Island. So tell us a little bit about the place. I need to tell people the locations. Tutukaka Coast, it's in the Northland region in the North Island. And you can only access it by boat, and your boat will start from the place of Tutukaka Harbour. If you are confused about how to spell this and you're like, what is this Frenchman talking about, there is a link in the description of this video with an article you can follow along. There is everything written, there is links for you to help you out, and there is much more detail. So make sure to check the description, there is a link for you. Okay, Tutukaka, Paul Knight Island, go for it, Laura.
Okay, Paul Knight Island is, just off the coast of Tutukaka. It's a whole series of islands that have been created with volcanic activity. They're known for harboring lots of interesting sea life, especially with some of the warmer currents being drawn in from the Coral Sea. So it is considered one of the sort of best places for scuba diving in New Zealand. And also the water, although it's maybe colder than a lot of places in the world.
Definitely. They provide you with a nice thick wetsuit.
Yes.
I don't think I felt cold whatsoever.
No, so but saying that, it is one of the warmer places for scuba diving in New Zealand. So
if you tend to be chilly, that's a good option.
Yeah, so just to bear that in mind. But yeah, that's a good point. All of the scuba diving that we're talking about and all the operators that we talk about in this video, they will all kit you out with a nice thick wetsuit, complete with a hood, booties, that sort of thing. Just like you do have the full get up when you are doing scuba diving.
Did we have a hood on this one? I don't think we did.
We did.
We did?
Yeah, wow. I've seen the photos, and for some reason this video is all crotch watch instead of anything else. So hopefully it turns to the head at some point.
It turns around the end, right? It's just kind of showing you the whole the whole
the
thing.
Knees.
Well, the reason why I put the camera like that actually on this one is just because quite often you kind of like when you go towards the fish, they kind of swim away, but then they reconvene in the back. Yeah. So that was the train of thought right here. But in the meantime, you guys get to enjoy my crotch for quite a while. Oh, Laura's crotch. We have no idea who it is.
Yeah.
I think it's Laura's actually. No, it's me. It's me. So yeah, here you go.
A couple of extra things about Paul Knight Islands. Not only does it have incredible sea life, but the formations underwater are really interesting. You have different caves. You have the huge Rico cave, which if you can't scuba dive in there, if you're not qualified for diving in caves, then you can actually take boats in there so you can see it nonetheless. You can go through giant archways via boat, and then you can go through underwater archways when you're scuba diving. So it really has an interesting underwater terrain. So yeah, for scuba diving in Poor Knights Islands, there is Dive Tutukaka that operates out of the Tutukaka Harbour. There's also Free Dive Aotearoa, so if you want to try free diving, then there's also an option for that.
There you go. So that was our number 1. We also have Coma 77 coming as the knight that says ni. Is that the one in Monty Python? The Holy Grail, and the knight that says ni, ni. Maybe that stands for Northern. I have no idea what you're saying, mate, but that entertains me. All right, so next up on our list, we have White Island. So before we start talking about White Island, can you actually still scuba dive in White Island after the controversial things that happened?
Double check that.
Yeah, okay,
so
cool.
there are still... Go
So
ahead.
to go scuba dive to White Island, you depart from Whakatane, which is the Bay of Plenty in the North Island. Go for it then.
Yeah, so White Island is indeed that big volcano that did famously erupt a couple of years ago. However, it's still the underwater landscape. There's plenty of interesting things to see. Some of the dive sites nearby are Volcano Rocks, Club Rocks, and Liaison's Reef. You can see sort of steaming vents in some areas when scuba diving in that area. But it's not just the sort of White Island area to check out. There's also the Whale Island nearby, which has some more interesting underwater landscapes. And interestingly enough, the dive operators here are also combined as fishing charters. So Dive Works fishing charters.
It's a good way to recover by divers.
Yeah, they'll fish you out if you're struggling to come back up. So yeah, you do have dive options there from, again, as Robin said, Whakatane, which is a town on the Bay of Plenty in the North Island.
Here you go. All right, so a reminder to all of you guys that you can ask us all your questions about traveling in New Zealand as we chit-chat about scuba diving in the country. You can ask us questions about anything. It doesn't have to be to do with scuba diving. All right, so number 3, we have Tui Wreck, which is also near the Tutukaka coast. So we still remain on the North Island for nights. It will get colder, just give us a minute. So this is again on the Tutukaka coast in North Island, and it's another one that you can only access by boats, and the boats will depart from Tutukaka Harbour.
Yeah, so the Tui Wreck is a former naval research vessel that was sunk to become an artificial reef. So wreck dives are always fun, and Tutukaka is obviously a very convenient place if you want to, for instance, do Poor Knights Islands and then spend some extra days going to some other dive sites. Then there really is like that really good variety to check out in the area. So again, we talked about Dive Tutukaka, which would be the best option to go. Probably free diving might be a bit too deep for free diving.
Yeah.
So yeah, Dive Tutukaka would be your best option for the Tui Wreck.
Also, if you're not certified as scuba diver, the Poor Knights Island is a significantly better experience for you, as you'll get to see a lot of sea life in relatively shallow environments. So you'll discover scuba, which is usually what you would do when you're not certified scuba diver, will be the best done there rather than this wreck. And actually, I don't think they will take people which are not certified
yeah.
there. Yeah. All right. So next up on our list, we are already at number 4. We have something in the South Island finally.
Yes.
So we're heading to Port Gore in the Marlborough Sound. This is the Mikhail Lermontov wreck.
Yeah, so the Mikhail Lermontov wreck.
Wow, this is why I tell you guys there's a link in the description.
This is it's quite an unusual one. So it is it's known as the largest wreck dive in Australasia.
Oh wow! Is it because the ship is large, or is it because the area is large?
The ship is large. But interestingly enough, there is not that many. There's not a local dive shop that can take you there. So the people that take you there are called New Zealand Diving, and they basically operate a multi-day charter to get to this wreck dive. So if you want to do a 4-day sort of full trip, full excursion, and then that is probably the best way to go.
Also, it's really deep.
Yes, it is a deep one. It's definitely one for certified divers. I think it goes down to 37 meters,
which is 121 freedom units. If you like to measure things in burgers and American flags, it's 121 feet.
Yeah, so this is definitely pushing the limits of recreational diving. Indeed, you will want to have your thickest wetsuit at the ready, and this is one for those hardcore divers.
In fact, more than having your thickest wetsuit, they actually do recommend you, the operators do recommend you having dry suit, but diving in a dry suit is quite different than diving in a wetsuit, so you may not be kind of comfortable, and some people do it in a wetsuit and it's absolutely fine, but they do recommend you to have a dry suit because it's that deep and cold, and it's the waters of New Zealand. After all, New Zealand is a sub-Antarctic island, so what are you expecting right here?
But at the top of the North Island, it's a subtropical landscape.
True.
So
that's true. Well, you still need a thick wetsuit. You do.
It is cold.
It does get cold. All right. So speaking of cold, let's go a little more south. Let's get to a little freezier water, and let's head to Dunedin. So Aramoana in Dunedin in Southland, it's kind of just at the Aramoana Mall, so it's right at the entrance of the Otago Harbour, which is about 20 kilometers northeast of Dunedin City.
Yeah, so this is certainly a good option if you want to see some of those larger sea life, such as seals.
Yes.
So they're always really playful in the water, although you will see them a lot on land in New Zealand. They're usually lazing about. They don't really like to be approached on land, but it's a whole different story once you get in the water. They are very curious and will swim around you, so that's really cool. So fingers crossed that is part of your trip, because of course you can never guarantee anything when it comes to wildlife and whether you're actually going to see them. Other interesting wildlife you could be seeing is carpet sharks, telescope fish, and also all sorts of interesting bits within the kelp forests. You'll find that most of New Zealand scuba diving is within sort of kelp forest environments. Once again, nice thick wetsuit is essential to keep you toasty.
In fact, I would even recommend having a layer under your wetsuit. I mean, at that point, when you go around Dunedin to go scuba diving, you may want an extra layer. But there are some exceptional scuba diving options in there. And also just, it's recommended UI experience as well for this one. By the way, you guys are watching our first ever scuba right here, so this is why we are so poor at what we're doing, which is beautiful to watch. It just makes me cringe so much.
Now that we are certified divers, we can't look back on this video.
I know, just looking back at it, it's like, oh my gosh, my buoyancy control is terrible.
Yes.
Okay, so that's 5 wrapped up right here. So far out of those 5, Laura, so what's the kind of your standout out of all of them?
I think my standout has to be Poor Knights Island.
Okay.
Yeah, the different sort of underwater seascapes with the arches and the different just rocky, interesting features combined with, of course, amazing fish. The Mau Mau Arch, should we talk about that? Yeah. Had huge schools of fish in there, so it's just really impressive, and also some interesting, I guess, underwater plant life that I only expected to see in tropical waters, but there actually can be some really colourful plant life in New Zealand's waters, so that was really surprising to me. What about you?
Yeah, no, I think I would agree, but to piggyback on what you're saying about the Mau Mau Arch, you can see all the fish right now on camera, which is quite awesome. See, that's the shot I was looking forward to rather than the crotch shot you've been watching for hours. So on top of that, what I really like about this place is that it's relatively shallow as well, so if you're not too confident on a scuba diver, that's something where you can go back up relatively easily without any decompression time or anything like that. So yeah, that's a really cool place to be.
It's a good way to actually have that introduction to scuba diving and see how amazing scuba diving can be, because sometimes you will go on intro dives and they're maybe not as impressive.
What do you mean? You can see shopping trolleys in the wild and tires and everything. If you do intro dive in the UK, you can see epic stuff like that.
That was definitely my experience. But here in New Zealand, you get some beautiful, you get to see really beautiful underwater seascapes and fish. And yeah, all this beautiful kelp and colourful. I don't want to call them coral because I'm not sure if they are coral, but it looks like coral as well. Yeah, it's just all beautiful.
Indeed. All right, so let's do another 5. And speaking of coral, I'm going to surprise everybody right here, and I'm going to talk about the Fiordland National Park. And in fact, I'm going to be talking about Milford Sound, which is in the southern end of New Zealand, about 5 hours drive south from Queenstown.
Yeah, so in Fiordland National Park, a company called Descent Scuba Diving, they operate scuba diving tours within Milford Sound itself, which is pretty cool.
But what's exceptional about Milford Sound's water life, Laura? Tell us about it.
So yeah, they have something called black and red coral, which is only a sort of species of coral that normally only occurs in really deep ocean, usually because it needs very little light to grow. But the thing with Milford Sound is that it has this layer. There's so much rain in Milford Sound that all this fresh water that is coming down from the rain, from the mountains, and coming into the fjord, it sort of creates this big layer of fresh water and tannins are sort of all that sort of plant life that has been washed off into the rivers. This sort of creates a layer of darkness above, or like on the water surface, so that when you get lower, you actually start to see this sort of coral species that would only grow in really dark conditions. So that makes it really unique in Milford Sound.
Look at this Mau arch right here. All that is fish, just so you guys know.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, so that's really like one of those places that you get to see something truly unique in New Zealand. Not many scuba divers will have seen that. However, there is some things to keep in mind.
Yes, so if there happen to be any heavy rain prior to your scuba diving trip, which is relatively common in the Fiordland National Park, well, at that point, there may be too much fresh water on the top of the layer of water, because it just kind of stays on top and then the salt water is below, and therefore it makes the water all murky. And with those kind of conditions, well, at that point, it's not safe to take beginners scuba diving, and to be fair, it doesn't make for the best scuba diving experience anyway, so your trip is likely to be cancelled, which is what has happened to us every single time we try to go scuba diving in Milford Sound. So it is a common occurrence, but if you're lucky enough to be there at the right time, or actually just more lucky than us, that's it. Man, that is just something you absolutely should be doing. We really want to do it, and to go see those black and red coral.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, that'd be so damn good. All right, so enough of all the cold waters. Let's head back to the North Island for some mildly warmer water. Still really cold, but mildly warmer water. And let's talk about Kapiti Islands. So Kapiti Island is nearby Wellington. It's on the North Island, and it's accessible by boat from the town or the beach of Paraparaumu, which is also an airport. It's one of the very small airports in New Zealand, which nobody ever heard of. Go for it, Laura.
Yeah, so Kapiti Island, it offers more opportunities for amazing scuba diving. On the island itself, it is a national, not a national park, but a conservation area.
Yep.
So that's area, and just around it's usually the wildlife is preserved. And people actually really enjoy this area for spearfishing, which kind of sounds weird after I say that the area is preserved. But yeah, where spearfishing is kind of a big deal in that area because there is a lot of amazing fish to see, even so shallow that you can do free diving and stuff there. But if you do want to do scuba diving in the area, then Dive Kapiti is an operator to go for. They are based, they'll take you from Paraparaumu beach for accessing Kapiti Island.
Alright, now as the French one on the team, let's talk about the Rainbow Warrior, which is in Cavalli Islands in the Bay of Island in North Island. So the tours will start from Pahia with places like Pahia Dive, for example. But a bit of a history, Laura. What's the Rainbow Warrior?
I think you probably know more than me about the history of the Rainbow Warrior. It was a Greenpeace ship.
Yeah, so that was a ship from Greenpeace that was in New Zealand to protest the nuclear testing that we did in the 80s to the 90s in Mururoa. And yeah, the French Secret Service didn't like the fact that some other French people were protesting. So yeah, they just kind of sunk it in. Yeah, that's it. That
Came
happened.
and sunk a ship.
Yeah, we popped in for a little bit of a sabotage, and yeah, since we coined the word, we thought we had to show the world that we were good at it, I guess. And so yeah, 1985 is what we did. That's not good part of our history.
No.
We shouldn't have done nuclear testing in the first place anyway, and we shouldn't sink ship of people that actually try to instill some common sense into us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so here we go. Sorry, Greenpeace.
So if you want to see a bit of history underwater, then the Rainbow Warrior is sunk near the Cavalli Islands in the Bay of Islands, which is right up north of the North Island. Again, a good operator to go with is Paihia Dive, so you can meet them at their dive shop right in the center of Paihia town, which is the main sort of town of the Bay of Islands, and then they will take it from there.
Yeah, so that's another one of those dive sites where you have to be certified. You can't just rock in and be like, hey, I never scuba dived in my life, and I want to do that. So yeah, just so everybody knows. All right, so let's head back to the southern end. We're going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth right here, and let's head to Kaikoura. I'm pretty sure you all know where Kaikoura is. It's on the southern end of New Zealand. It is about 2 hours drive north of Christchurch, and your dive site will be accessible by boat from Kaikoura town, and there's actually multiple dive sites nearby.
Yeah, so Kaikoura is another great opportunity to see some of those larger marine mammals, which are always fun to see underwater, like the seals. You might be lucky to see dolphins, but
the dusky kind especially, because they are very, very, very prominent around Kaikoura, and they're super playful.
And there's also various limestone reefs to check out and kelp forests. Really interesting seascapes to explore there. Also checking, Kaikoura is famous for the crayfish in the area, so you can get you can get to the bottom of the reefs and the ocean's bottom to see the different crayfish, that sort of thing as well. So there's really like a diverse array of marine wildlife to check out.
Yeah, crustaceans are not often something you get to see on dives, but around the Kaikoura area, it's a good place to be able to spot them and see them behave. They're really interesting animals, and I'd say, in fact, crustaceans are actually the most fun animals to see underwater, because if you just stop and kind of watch them behave, they don't have too much of an ability to swim away. They do with their tail a little bit, but they stay nearby. Yeah, they stay around, and they actually tend to kind of get back to behaving how they want relatively fast. So it's kind of cool. All right. Speaking of seeing animals underwater, let's head to the place where I saw my first octopus underwater ever. And that is Mercury Island, which is in the Coromandel in the North Island, and your tours will depart from around Whitianga.
So Mercury Islands is a scattering of islands just off the Coromandel. The good thing about having so many little different islands and rocks and nooks and crannies is that, when the inevitable wind comes along, there are and the sea conditions get a little bit rougher in some areas, you can usually find places that are a bit calmer in other areas. So dive shops like Dive Zone Whitianga, they'll know the area really well and take you to like the best place for diving according to the conditions. Again, you're getting to see beautiful kelp forests. As Robin says, there's opportunities to find things hiding in the rocks and in the kelps like octopus, but all sorts of amazing schools of fish. Maybe if you're lucky, you might see a shark or two.
Yeah.
There's really quite a lot of.
If you're lucky, you see the shark doesn't see you.
Yeah. So there's lots of interesting, interesting variety there, and like a lot of scuba diving in New Zealand, no two dives are the same. So check it out, see what you see, and let us know.
Indeed. All right, so that's another 5. So we are at 10 right now. We'll do another 5 because we do have time right here. But out of those one, Laura, what tickles your fancy?
Ooh, I think either Kaikoura or Dunedin. I'm thinking probably Kaikoura because I do like a little bit of the mixture of the possibility of seeing seals underwater or the possibility of seeing dolphins and that sort of thing. It's always a cool addition. Although seeing a shark would be pretty cool as well in the Mercury Islands.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really attracted to shark, you know that. I mean, every time we go in the South Pacific, I'm really into all reef sharks and stuff. So yeah, Mercury Island is my place. Also, it has a special place in my heart because that's the first time I saw the octopus.
Yeah.
And I want to go back seeing Brian the octopus.
Yeah, I think that was also our first place that we scuba dived in New Zealand.
Maybe.
I think it was for me, at least.
Can't recall. I'm old now. The dates are fuzzy in my head.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Again, as a reminder, any names of places that we're talking about is in the link in the description below. And let's continue with number 11 on our list. So we're heading back to the Bay of Islands. We froze ourselves to death scuba diving around the southern end of New Zealand. Now we're heading back to the top north, and we're heading to the Canterbury, Laura.
Yeah, so this is the HMNZS Canterbury. Was quite a large, somewhat intact shipwreck that is just off the coast of Paihia. This one is really quite a short boat ride from Paihia town itself in the Bay of Islands, so this is quite an accessible wreck dive compared to some of the others that we've talked about on this list. But yeah, there's lots of interesting features to check out on this shipwreck. One of probably the highlights will be the helicopter hangar there. But yeah, you'll see all sorts of colourful, crazy sort of wildlife attaching itself to the various
taking back ownership of the wreck,
the
which is cool.
ship.
Yeah.
Not the cruise ship, the ship. Really interesting one. Again, you need to be certified because it does go down to a certain depth, which means that you need to be, I think, at least open water certified, if I am remembering correctly.
Yeah, maybe advanced, but I'm not sure.
Maybe advanced. So, yeah.
All right, so next up on our list, we're heading to Goats Island Marine Reserve, which is in Lae, which is still in the Northland region of the Northern, and it's about, let's say, 90 kilometers north of Auckland. So I don't know how much it is in miles, but 90 kilometers.
I'm actually coming to think, I think it's actually in the Auckland region still.
Is it?
Yeah, I think so.
Huh,
I think it's still classed as the Auckland region.
Oh well.
Anyway, I'll change that on the website. Cool. Goat Island Marine Reserve this is really famous for, well, of course it's a marine reserve. I think it was the first established marine reserve in New Zealand, so that's why it sort of has that famous name to it, and obviously means that the wildlife here is protected and the fish here can thrive. You often see things like eagle rays, stingrays, that sort of thing, so that makes it really exciting to see. The great thing about Goat Island Marine Reserve is that you really don't need to go too deep to enjoy the marine life here. You can you can go on intro dives and you will see really amazing things. You can even go snorkeling here. There's clear kayaking, like transparent kayaking
so
boats.
if you don't feel like scuba diving but you want to see everything, well, it's an easy thing to do.
Yeah, so this is really an accessible place to do to enjoy the marine life here. If you were looking for a place to learn to dive, then that would be a good place as well. Again, because the marine life is so shallow and you're usually doing like your scuba skills and stuff in shallow water when you're learning to dive. So that whole combination makes it definitely worth the while.
Yeah, and if you want to go scuba diving but the people you're traveling with are not wanting to go scuba diving, the great thing about the Goat Island Marine Reserve is that because you're like kind of within the shore, there's a lot of other things for them to do, as we mentioned, snorkeling, the clear kayaking and all that. So it's a very flexible option, I'd say, when it comes down to scuba diving. So I will recommend this one if you're traveling with a bunch of other people as well.
Yeah.
All right. So next up on our list, we have a completely different island. We talked about the North Island, we talked about the South Islands. Now let's talk about Stewart Island, which is all the way in the south of the South Island. So
Yeah,
Stewart Island, tell us about it.
So this is the southernmost place that you can essentially go scuba diving in New Zealand. However, scuba diving in Stewart Island, what makes it different is that it's not your average scuba dive. What's famous here is the shark dive. Shark diving here. It's also the shark. Can you do it?
Yeah, there is. So you can do shark diving without basically scuba diving. Really, it's kind of a fake kind of scuba diving. So you'll be put into a cage. You will have a regulator that will come from the cave.
Tube.
So exactly. So you wouldn't be carrying all your tank or anything like that. And within that cave, then you'll be able to observe in safety all the sharks that will come around. So that's a very obviously unique experience, and that will kind of absolutely blow your mind, because it's really not often that you'll be able to see all that. So all that's kind of happening around the Fovo Strait, which is kind of like basically this passage between the the South Island and
Stewart Island.
The small island of Stewart Island.
So the thing to note is that although people always associate Stewart Island with shark diving, you actually don't do the experience from Stewart Island. You do the experience from a town called Bluff, which is the town where you would usually take the ferry to get to the Stewart Island, and that's where Shark Experience, the operators that do the scuba diving the shark diving trips, that's where they're based, and that's where they'll take you from. So just bear that in mind, that you don't necessarily have to go onto Stewart Island to enjoy this trip. It's also partly a sort of scenic boat ride as well, so you do get to experience some of the smaller islands surrounding Stewart Island. So you don't necessarily have to be shark diving to enjoy the trip. So if you've got people in your group that just want to go for a nice boat ride and see the sharks from above the surface, maybe they're a bit too scared to get in there, then there's that option as well. They can go on the boat ride and enjoy the sight of the great white sharks topside.
Yes, and it's just such a unique thing to do that I really recommend it. So we have Morena from Christchurch, Aotearoa, says Machua X, how are you doing?
Morena, what are you doing in Christchurch?
Yes, and Laura, tell the viewers, what does Morena mean?
Morena means good morning in the Maori language, which is the indigenous language of New Zealand, also known as Te Reo Maori.
Indeed. Alright, so next spot where you can scuba dive in New Zealand. So the next two spots are a little bit of a cheat. We just combined two of them. We just split two of them together, but it's basically Auckland. And spoiler, the next one's going to be Auckland as well. But let's focus on the East Coast bays of Auckland to begin with, Laura.
So you can go, a popular spot to go scuba diving from the East Coast bays in Auckland is Matheson's Bay, and a company called Dive HQ Auckland will guide you through the whole process, whether you're an experienced diver or you are going to do a scuba diving course, that sort of thing. Then they'll sort of, the area is kind of known as being a safe site for beginners, so that may well be one of the places that you could do an introductory dive.
But if you're not a beginner, Matheson's Bay is quite famous for its night diving options over there. So if you want to see some really unique marine wildlife underwater, then that's a really good option. However, you do have to be certified to do night diving.
Yes,
for
absolutely.
Sure. Yes, absolutely. Anything else about the East Coast Bay, or do we move on to the next one, Laura?
Bear in mind, the easiest place to access the East Coast bays is from North Shore in the Auckland region.
There you go. All right, so number 15 and last on our list for today, we have the West Coast reefs of Auckland. So those ones are going to be starting from the West Coast beaches of the country. So anywhere basically from the western coastlines. Laura, what's up there?
Yeah, highlights in terms of marine life would be things like crayfish and colourful reef fish. There are options for both beginners and seasoned divers alike. Again, Dive HQ in Auckland is probably the most well-known company to go with when it comes to doing either recreational trips or learning to dive. So yeah, check them out.
Here you go. All right, so that's 15 places which are awesome to scuba dive at in New Zealand. We do have a full complete guide for you in the description of this video, so you can go and read them. You have every name places written for you. Everything is clickable, so you can find all the right places, all the companies and all that good stuff. So check the link in the description below. Also click all the buttons that YouTube wants you to click, because it's all about algorithm and AI nowadays, so do that. If I'm not convincing enough, that's because I don't care that much about feeding the AI or the algorithm or the thingies. We're happy with our 2 viewers for the whole hour. Matthew X says referring league and having a break from work. That's what he's doing in Christchurch. He's heading back to the North Island today.
Oh,
wow.
Exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hopefully the ferry doesn't run aground this time. That'd be good.
Yeah, are you heading by ferry or are you taking a flight to get back to the North Island?
The ferry in Marlborough Sound will make for an epic artificial reef.
Yes,
I have to be honest.
that would be the largest shipwreck.
That definitely would become the largest shipwreck in the southern hemisphere.
In Australasia.
Sure. Yeah. Where did the ship like Titanic or some of the big World War II warships, did none of them sink in the Australasia area? Like, are we really saying? Like, because I know the
or maybe
HMS
it's a wreck dive, like ones that you can that's recreationally. Yeah.
Because it's the HMNZS.
Yeah.
So hard to say this one.
Yeah.
Canterbury. So it is a warship, yes, but there must have been bigger ship. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just feel like it must have been bigger ship.
Something to look further into. Something to investigate.
Indeed.
I say.
Alright, so that's going to wrap up this video. In about 20 minutes, we have an hour-long call with all our Patreon. If you want to join our Patreon group, it's pretty fun. We plan our trip together. We help you planning your trip. We do, like actual group calls, so you can interact with us and everything. It's heaps of fun. Join us then. In the meantime, you have a safe week. We'll see you next week for another one of those awesome live shows. Bye-bye, everybody.
See you next week.